Hey everyone. So you're wondering where my friend Mike Lindell is? Well, guess what? He was actually creating the My Slipper. It's like walking on clouds, right? Don't forget to use the promo code Carter, Carter, and you will receive 40% off of your My Slippers. Your whole family's going to love it. Well, it seems like John Kerry is in a big mess. I couldn't have picked a better person to basically divulge all of Israel's secrets to the Iranians. But then again, you know, it's John Kerry, right? They want to go after President Trump in the past for the Logan Act. All we have to do is look at John Kerry. He's like violated that Logan Act all over the place and no one seems to really care. We're going to talk about that today. But more importantly today, I have Michael Yon. He is probably one of the imminent war correspondents on earth right now. I can tell you that Michael Yon has been in almost every combat zone in modern times. He has traveled and worked in over 76 countries, whether that be war, whether he's covering famine, whether he's covering guerrilla warfare in the jungle. Today, he was with me from the Panama jungle. So I've already done the interview and it is explosive. In fact, it's such a phenomenal interview with Michael Yon that we're making it into two parts. So I'm going to tease the heck out of this because he is in the Darien jungle, which is probably one of the most dangerous jungles, on the trek to the U.S. border with Mexico. So people come from all over the world. He'll explain that, how people fly into Brazil from Yemen, from Pakistan, from Cuba, from other places, how people from Venezuela, and this dangerous journey inside this jungle where so many people have lost their lives on their way to the United States, and the implications of that and what that means for us. We're going to be talking to him about that. And this is a man that is not afraid to tell it like it is. And he has a lot of warnings for us as Americans based on what he has experienced and what he's seen overseas. Also, I'm going to be talking to you about special interest aliens. What is that? You know, people that are coming through Ecuador and Colombia. I'll be talking about that with him. I'm going to talk to you about Kamala Harris and all of the craziness surrounding our vice president, who basically just refuses to go down to the border and, you know, do the right thing. Just see what's going on there. You know, I don't want to be, just bashing on the Biden administration because they're the Biden administration. That's not the reason, but they are not doing their job. They are not protecting the American public. The only job of the executive branch, the most important job of the executive branch, is to protect our nation. And they are not doing that. And neither are they protecting the people that they say they care so much about. I actually really do love the people they are talking about. That's why I go down there. That's why I go down to the U.S.-Mexico border and talk to the children and ask them what their journey is like. That's why I have Michael Yon on the show today. That's why I'm talking to him. I want to know what is going on. And by the way, Michael Yon has invited me to go to Panama with him so I can go to the Darien Gap with Michael Yon. And I think I'm going to do it. In fact, I know I'm going to do it. And we will do a special podcast from Panama when I do make it down there. Remember, you can get all of our stories and more at saracarter.com. That's where you're going to sign up for my email list. So we do not get shadow banned. That's where you're going to be able to keep up with me, and you're going to get links to all my social media. So go to saracarter.com. That's saracarter.com, and be sure to sign up for that email list. Folks, if you're anything like the millions of other frustrated Americans looking for an alternative to that other senior organization and want to support an organization that actually takes responsible action, then join AMAC. AMAC, the Association for Mature American Citizens, is the fastest growing conservative 50-plus organization in America. AMAC believes in the values that have made America so great. That's faith, family, and freedom. Three things that the Sara Carter Show absolutely believes in as well. AMAC offers an alternative to just about every benefit that AARP offers, but without the liberal agenda. We don't want that liberal agenda. I stand with AMAC, and I hope that you will too. I encourage you to join today at amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. The benefits of membership are great, but the cause is even greater. I want to talk to you a little bit about what I witnessed firsthand in Tijuana, Mexico, when I was just there, and what I've seen along the U.S.-Mexico border over the last, 5 to 6 weeks that I've been traveling back and forth, reporting on stories for Fox News, Sean Hannity. I was blown away when I saw the criminality and the behavior associated with, illegal immigration, on the southern side of the border. Now, this was a migrant camp. I'm talking about there were roughly 1,500 plus people inside the migrant camp. Over 500 at the time were children. I hear the migrant camp is growing. I'm actually in touch with people in Tijuana, Mexico right now over the last week, trying to keep up with what is going on there. Now, all of the people in this migrant camp, there are people from Haiti. There are people from, Honduras, Guatemala, Cuba. I can go on and on. Mostly Central America, mostly Honduran, El Salvadorian, Nicaraguan as well in this camp. They're all living in squalor. The Mexican government finally got some restrooms out there for them. Finally, and they're outhouses. They're basically little outhouses. People were literally using the streets. So can you imagine what the neighbors were dealing with there? Can you imagine what the people that live in that community were dealing with? I spoke with them. I spent time with them inside. It was very, very dangerous because MS-13 gang members were actually in control of the migrant camp. Apparently, there were 8 to 10 allegedly MS-13 gang members that were being paid to kind of guard the camp. It wasn't really to guard the camp from bad guys. It was to guard the camp from people like me that were going to see what was going on there, because they being the people that are running those camps, these kind of offshoot non-governmental organizations I hear, and special interest groups, people that have a lot vested, by the way, a lot vested in getting some of that $4 trillion that President Joe Biden has promised to take care of this crisis that he created, by the way. So he creates a crisis, right? Creates this massive crisis by making all of these weird promises that he's going to overturn everything that Trump did, that he's going to open the borders, that he's going to treat people fairly, that he's going to let people into the country. And now we have a mess because people are crossing, coming to the southern border, trying to cross in here and crossing in illegally. And many of them are losing their lives. Wait until you hear the interview with Michael Yon. There's somebody that is actually there on, at the Darien Gap, in the Darien jungle, and seeing what is going on. Somebody who's able to tell you the truth. Not someone who's making up stuff. Not someone who is just rewriting a press release from the Biden administration. But these are people. These are people who are desperate. And now they hear President Biden, they hear Vice President Kamala Harris, and they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to get into America. Let's just do whatever we can to get in. And they're putting their lives on the line. And now Vice President Harris says, well, she's not going to go down there. She's citing COVID. I want you to listen to this. This is Texas Congressman Troy Nehls slamming Kamala Harris for citing COVID as the reason to avoid her trip to the border. I obviously didn't. I went down there and I met with the people. If she's that worried about COVID, then she's got to shut that border down. If she's really that concerned about you and COVID, then she needs to close that border down, because a good portion of the people crossing that border not only have COVID, but they have other illnesses. And I believe when you do run into somebody who is sick, you have to help them. You have to help them and put yourself and your feelings aside. And that's what, the Border Patrol agents do every day. I hope I'm that kind of person. I do that. I put myself aside when I'm telling those stories and bringing them to you, because I believe it's that important And now Kamala Harris is saying, well, the vice president, she's just too good for that. She's not going to go expose herself to COVID. I guess she's just too good for that. Even though she puts down our Border Patrol agents, puts down our immigration and customs enforcement officers and all of that, they can put themselves on the line, but she can't. Listen to what this congressman says. Congressman
and look
Nels.
at her. She's been jet setting around this country, going to all the different blue states, talking about this infrastructure plan and everything else. So, no, this isn't COVID, Kamala, and you know it. You just don't want to visit the southern border because you know what you're going to hear. You're going to hear from the Border Patrol, Department of Public Safety, Immigration, small town mayors, and everyone that lives along that southern border that you are doing a horrible job. You're in complete denial, and you need to fix the southern border. That's what she would hear if she visited it. So she's going to use the excuse, like everything else, COVID.
He's great. COVID Kamala. That's like kind of a new hashtag, right? Hashtag COVID Kamala. She doesn't want to go there. He's absolutely right. Congressman Nels is right. Let me show you where Kamala Harris has been since becoming the border czar, the so-called border czar. March 26th, New Haven, Connecticut. March 27th through the 31st, Washington, D.C. April 1st through the 4th, Brentwood, California. April 5th, Oakland, California. April 7th through the 18th, Washington, D.C. April 19th, High Point, North Carolina. April 25th, Plymouth and Concord, Massachusetts. And next week, it'll be Baltimore. But you can't go, Vice President Harris, to the border. You can't sit with those families that are crossing our border and asking them, well, hey, why? Why are you crossing the border? You know what they'll tell her? They'll say, because you promised us. You promised us that we could come. She'll have to do a lot of explaining. A lot. And then she'll have to sit and talk with our Border Patrol agents if she even gets the opportunity, because she may not. She may just want to talk to supervisors and officials and not to the actual agents who are working the ground daily, by the way, exposing themselves to whatever comes across the border and being the first line of help, like Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council, Chris Cabrera, was when I was out there with him. And a man was extremely ill with his two daughters, wet, deep cough, said he was asthmatic, sounded like it was a lot more than that going on. Oxygen levels down in the low 70s. Chris just went right into action. Everybody was more focused on him than their own health and than their own selves. That's the selfless nature of our Border Patrol agents. They are selfless. They don't mind doing whatever it takes to help someone else. That's the real story that you're not hearing. You know, over the last year, I have been, and I know all of you, it's been terrible when we hear about, you know, maybe a bad cop, a bad apple, you know, something going wrong in a city, a kid gets killed, you know, by a cop, or something happens. And all of a sudden, you know, just like what happened in Ohio, you know, it seems like everything you hear on the news is about how terrible, and I'm not talking all news. I'm not talking Fox News. I'm talking about CNN and MSNBC and, you know, every other news station that just wants to create this massive wedge in our nation, this racial divide. All they talk about is how horrible the cops are and how racist. And then even our own president, President Biden, talking about systemic racism in the United States. It is a lie. Don't believe it for a second, guys. There are bad people. Sure, there's racists. Sure, there's bad people in the world. I have traveled a lot of the world. I've met some of them. I've seen some of their actions. But there is not systemic racism in this country. Not at all. I have been out there with police officers. I've been out there on the front lines of the border. I've been in war zones, and I have seen more good and more love and more assistance from mankind, one to each other, than I have seen bad. And you want to know something? Hearing about all of this horrible stuff all the time. Yes, it's true. It's true. Every once in a while, there is something really horrific that happens, and we've got to take a pause. We've got to listen to it. We've got to deal with it. We've got to find a resolution for it. But don't let these lawmakers for political purposes, or these special interest groups, or these wild groups like Antifa and these crazy professors in our universities that are like teaching our children how terrible our nation is and dividing us even further, and then making it seem like everything America does is some kind of horrible thing. And, you know, we've hurt and destroyed the world. I mean, my gosh, what fatalists? What fatalists? They can't even like look at our nation and say, you know what? Look at how awesome this is. You know what I saw on the border? You want me to tell you what I saw? I saw Border Patrol agents helping people. I saw them getting them water. I saw them directing them to where a Border Patrol station would be where they could get processed so they wouldn't get lost out on the Rio Grande. These are people that have just crossed. People we don't even know who they are. You want to talk about a great nation? Try doing that in any other nation. Just try it. I would love to see all the Antifa groups that say we're so terrible, and Nancy Pelosi and, you know, all of the leftists. Like, why don't you guys all get together and just test out the theory? Test out the theory. Just cross some other nation's border and ask for help and water and get directions to where you need to go to get processed, and see if they take you to a hospital if you've been beaten up. See what happens. See what happens when you do that to another country. I can guarantee you that almost 100% you will not get treated as good or with as much respect as you do here in the United States. You won't do it. I promise you that. You will not see it. This is what is so important that we remember. And I'm going to take you in a moment to my interview with Michael Yon. Like I said, he is probably one of the most premier, eminent combat correspondents in the United States and probably in the world. He has traveled all over the world. Generals contact Michael Yon, 4-star generals. They talk to him about what's going on in countries. He sees things before they happen because he's already been so accustomed to what is happening. I would describe him as a savant. And it's really frightening what he has to say. I want you to listen to that. But there's also a sense of hope because we need to realize what's going on in order to find a resolution to it. And that's what's important for us. That's what's important for us. I want you to hear this last clip. This is Kamala Harris saying she's not going to play political games when she's asked why she's not at the border. Because I want this to come into perspective for you.
Republicans are attacking you, saying you shouldn't be in New Hampshire talking about infrastructure. You should be in the southern border talking about immigration. How do you respond to them?
I'm not going to play political games.
I'm not going to play political games. I'm not going to play political. This isn't a political game. This is about our nation, folks. This is about us. You and I together, like, actually, we know what's going on. We understand what's happening at our border. It's not the political game is what they're doing to our nation. The political game is the great divide. The political game is using innocent people, migrants, as pawns. That's the political game. That's the game that we cannot forget. That's the game that we've got to be focused on so that we don't allow them to divide us any further. And before I get any further, I'm going to bring Michael Yon on, America's most experienced combat correspondent. Like I said before, he's traveled to 76 countries. I was in Afghanistan with him. I know how great he is, and Iraq. He joins me from Panama today, where he's been in and out of one of the most dangerous jungles in the world. Okay, Michael, thank you so much for being on the Sara Carter Show. I am so excited, everyone, because Michael Yon, as I said in the beginning of the show, is probably one of the greatest, if not the best war correspondent on planet Earth today. You have been to more than 76 countries. You have covered the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, all over the planet, in Africa. Now you are in Panama, in the Darien jungle. I want you to tell me everything about it. But first, thank you so much for being on the show. And I was telling Michael before he came on, I want to be Michael Yon. That is going to be our new t-shirt. We're going to give proceeds. We're going to go to Michael Yon so we can continue covering war. We're going to make it happen. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been quite an adventure. I mean, I'm out here in Panama now. I've been out in the Darien Gap For those who don't know what the Darien Gap is, it's that area between Colombia and Panama that is 60 miles of no roads. It's just literally wild Indian country. And I mean that in the real sense. The Imbara Indians is one group that's out there. I've been out with the Imbara. In fact, I was on the phone with some this morning, but they've taken me out deep into the jungle. So when the migrants come into South America, they will, especially the ones from Africa or ones from Yemen or Pakistan or Bangladesh, they will go through, or all over the world, actually, Haitians as well, and Cubans. They will go to Brazil and Ecuador first, because you can get into those countries without a visa, right? And then if you look at the map, you know how it is because you've traveled the world. But for those who don't have that map in their head like we do, they'll go into Brazil or Ecuador and then funnel up to Colombia, right? Because Colombia is that northernmost country which feeds into the isthmus in Panama. That's the Darien Gap, is that little northernmost part. And so
it's very dangerous. And it's very dangerous, Michael. It's very dangerous. I want you to explain, because I don't think people really can fathom what's happening here. A lot of people will ask me when I'm down at the border, like, you ran into Cubans, you ran into people from Africa, you ran into, a migrant from India or Pakistan. How did they get here? And I try to explain the journey from where they start to how they get here. And for a lot of people, they never comprehended that ever, that people were just coming into Brazil. They didn't need a visa. Or remember, Venezuela under Hugo Chavez used to be an open process for a lot of people from Iran. So explain a little bit how dangerous that is and what that entails.
It's literally a war out there. I mean, it's wartime level dangerous. For instance, one group, I was in Texas and New Mexico on that border area, going down into Mexico, back to El Paso, that sort of thing, New Mexico, and then shot down, actually went up to Antifa land up in Portland, and then I shot down to Colombia. And so Colombia, because, we have multiple national security threats now. We got China, we've got internal conflict, and we've got the migrant issue, which is epic in scale. So shot down to Colombia with war correspondent Chuck Holton and a Japanese correspondent, Masako Ganaha. And so we went down there to Nicoclí. Nicoclí is one of the places at the end of the road. You have to get on a boat to go over to a place called Capargana. Capargana is where they launch off into the Darien Gap. So we met a bunch of Haitians and Cubans and Africans of various sorts over in Nicoclí. Then we got on a boat, shot over to Capargana, stayed there for a few days, went into the Darien Gap, but only for about an hour. And they were moving through the gap. And this one Haitian family, for instance, we kept in contact with. They're now in Mexico. They're in Tapachula, Mexico. One 16-year-old girl and her 12-year-old brother and their mother were together. And so we kept in contact. In their group of about 70 or 80 people, 11 died, according to them. So that's the kind of level of danger. 11 dead, according to them. 70 or 80.
What killed them? What did they say killed the 11 that were with their group?
3 were in a river. 2 women swept away and a man drowned. And so all drowned. A baby that was 10 months old died after getting to the Panama side, apparently dehydration because it had diarrhea. I've got photos of the baby. Then there's, so that's 4 people out of the 11. The other 7 were not murdered in this case, according to them. Many are murdered out there. All pretty women are raped, every single one. In fact, you can see on the video that I just put on my Patreon, from my Patreon, it feeds over to YouTube. But the Venezuelans are saying every light-skinned woman gets raped, every single one.
Let's play that video. Let's play that video. We have it right here. Jenny Terre was able to get that video from you. I want to play the sound here. Venezuelan migrants in the Darien Gap speak about death along the journey to the United States. This is exclusive, Michael Yon.
Solo hombres con comida y ya.
En el camino encontramos niños muertos, personas muertas.
5 gente muerta.
Personas muertas, 2 niños.
2 niños muertos.
Entonces,
How many started with them?
no se lo recomendamos.
No se lo recomendamos a nadie.
A ninguno. Sabia no es para todo el mundo.
Eso es para hombre, la selva es para hombre.
No, ni
Solo
para
para
hombre,
hombre.
porque como le digo, hay niños muertos, niños muertos.
Many boys killed, many boys.
Muchachos,
¿Como cuánto? ¿Como cuántos niños?
Niños, 2 niños por el camino, 5, 2 mujeres, 3 varones. dos niños. Violaron en el camino con nosotros, violaron a 3 personas, 3 niñas de 13, 12 y 14 que están aquí en el campamento.
Hay más de una mujer.
How violent? They shoot or stab? What?
Y también a la mayoría de las mujeres blancas que están acá fueron violadas, que no es mentira.
Many white women is violence.
The women that come through, raping, you mean?
Yeah.
That's incredible. I speak Spanish. I understood what they were saying. I could hear the varying accents. Michael, it's tragic. I mean, explain what they said. I mean, they said they don't recommend anybody go across, try to make this journey. They said women are being raped. They talked about deaths on the road. They talked about deaths of young boys. This is what I want all of you to understand. Michael Yon is covering these stories that no one else wants to cover because it's so dangerous and because, frankly, the narrative does not fit what the administration wants. It's the same reason I'm down at the border, same reason I went into Tijuana the other day, same reason I go across into Mexico. Explain, Michael, what it was like for you to be with these folks.
It's a trail of tears. I just made that video last Tuesday at a village called Bajo Chiquito. Bajo Chiquito. That's at the edge of the Darien Gap. So in other words, when you leave the Darien Gap after that 6, 10, 12 days, depending on how long it takes you to make it through, which will depend upon your fitness level, how many people intercept you, rapes and all that stuff. The rain, of course, has a big effect. That's where you come limping out, was right there. So those guys were just recently out, I believe that day or the day before. Some of the people I was talking with were literally limping in. And so that's the first village. It's way beyond any roads. You have to go up in a dugout canoe that's made out of a tree. Literally, it's a one-piece canoe, right? So that's how you get up there. And so it's way beyond the roads. And so you see people from all over the world there. There's Yemenis, there are Pakistanis, there are literally, just name it, Somalis. It's just like 50 countries probably. I've got actual documents that list the countries that they're from, government documents from Panama. This is the wild, wild west. When they're out there in the jungle, some of the Embera Indians that are treating me quite well, it's the Embera that are telling me that actually many of the people that are doing the raping and killing out there, many of the Embera actually are members of FARC, right? And so the Embera that are way out deep into the Darien Gap, they've gone full Comanche.
Explain FARC. Explain FARC for everyone out there that doesn't understand, doesn't remember FARC, doesn't understand what was going on during that time. Just briefly kind of explain it so people understand what you're talking about when it comes to FARC.
FARC are communists, and they're trying to overthrow the Colombian government, right? And so they've been out there for years. I mean, and this is a huge industry on getting these migrants up. They're treated almost like tourists because when you go in through Colombia, when you go through Cartagena and then end up in the Darien Gap, you have whatever money you've got on you, your watches, your phones or whatever. Most of that's going to be robbed, although some people do come out with their phones and passports. Most of the people have their phones and passports. Everything is stolen. If you're a light-skinned woman, you get raped, period, right? And so once you step out into that village where I made that video, just like 50 meters from those guys where I made that video, the first concrete you step on after those many miles out in the jungle is a little store, which I videoed, and that's where you can get Western Union or MoneyGram. So in other words, you're going to come out with no money, but you've probably already Western Union or MoneyGrammed money to yourself in advance. So that as soon as you step out of the jungle, bingo, you've got money or your family sends it, right? Because there's no phones out there. There's no electricity in that village other than generators because you're way beyond, it's apocalypse now type area, right? So but you can get money, and it's 20%. They charge 20%. So now,
who's running all these small money hubs? Because I remember in the past there used to be an issue with how the money was being transferred, who was running it. There was a lot of concern that money in Central America as well as South America was being moved through some of these smaller, I would guess, pseudo Western Union types, but mainly going as well overseas to terrorist organizations. I mean, you got FARC here making money off of them, right? You got communist groups making money off of them in the jungle. You've got smugglers, you've got drug cartels, and you also have this issue where we don't even know who's coming into our country. I mean, we don't even know who all these people are. And they're coming from places which are considered special interest to the United States, or at least was considered of a concern. Syria, Yemen, Pakistan, Iraq, Afghanistan, those countries are of special interest. Maybe the Philippines, and other parts of the world where Al-Qaeda has some links and other extremist groups.
All right. From Mindanao, places like that, certainly. I mean, they're all out there. Iraqis come through, Afghans come through, even some Chinese come through. I've even been told of some Thais that come through. I didn't meet any Thai. My office is actually in Chiang Mai, Thailand, right? So, I mean, so if I see Thais, I'll probably spot them I'll hear them talking anyway. I know it's Thai, or if they're Filipinos, I'll pick up the Tagalog, right? So they come in right there, and the actual Western Union will be up in Panama City, where I'm at now, right? And then they just call down. There is a phone. You can get cell coverage or text down there. And so they'll get the text, and they have the money there in the village, and then they'll just 20%, they charge them. So now the main Indian down there, who's been taking me around all over the place, he says that village alone makes $3,000 to $4,000 a day off of the migrants, $3,000 to $4,000 a day. So in a village of about 300 people, that's about $1 million a year. That's epic money for a place like that, right? So,
right.
So you get robbed every step of the way, whether it's in Colombia, finally to get on the boat. They're charging a lot more to the migrants than they charge to us. For instance, for me to take a canoe way up in the jungle, for my whole boatload of people, it's $100. For them, it's $400. For the migrants, $400. So that's $40 each, because the canoe will sit 10 people. So once you get to that village, Bajo Chiquito, where I made that video with the Venezuelans, then they'll take a canoe downriver for $400, so $40 each, 10 people. And then you go to Las Blancas, which is a migration reception center, or you go to San Vicente, which is there's two reception centers, San Vicente and Las Blancas. So you feed out into that village where I made the video, and then you feed to those two other reception centers. And from there you get in-processed, and then you get sent to Costa Rica. So then go ahead.
No, I just want everybody to think about what is going on here, the process of getting to the U.S. I think, for Americans, we're so used to we go into a grocery store and, for example, our meat's packaged. We don't even wonder where it came from, right? It didn't go. We just pick it up, we buy our stuff, and we leave. A lot of people think of the border as people just showed up. They just showed up on the southern border. This is a long journey. I want you to think about the numbers here. That 15 times more children are traveling, according to the UN right now, through the Darien jungle in the last 4 years. 15 times more. Think about children traveling through this jungle, and young women that are getting raped. And of course, the death toll, just like Michael described, the people that he had met from Haiti, who probably never imagined when they started on their journey that 11 of them would be lost in this jungle on their way to the United States. Can you describe maybe the conditions, because I think this is so fascinating, what it would be like to be a child traveling in that jungle with a guide? What are they up against? Is it diseases? Is it bugs? Is it the rape? Is it everything? What is it?
I would say, I've just gotten some of the records, so I'm going to be able to analyze this literally in the next 24 hours. But I would say about a quarter of the people coming through, or a third, are children. When I say children, I mean including infants. And so it's really tough. Many of them die, and period. And their parents die, right? So often they're just going through with their mother. Some are going through with mother and father. Well, we presume they're their mother and father. They could actually have been kidnapped or something else already, right? We don't know that. And the DNA testing, as you know, is a very contentious issue. So what happens? I just talked with a government leader yesterday in Panama about the children. I talked to her on Sunday. And many of the children, if the mother or parents die in the jungle, which happens, they just picked up another one last week. It was an infant. I don't remember how old, but it was an infant. And so often the baby doesn't know where it came from. It doesn't even speak a language yet, right? Has no idea where it came from. So if the mother and father die, or the mother dies in the jungle, if somebody is nice enough to bring it out, then they're like, hey, I got this baby. It's not mine. So the Panamanians are humanitarians. They will take it. and they'll keep it. And they'll put out advertisements. They'll contact the embassies. Is this from your country? Is anybody missing a baby? It came out of the Darien Gap. And if nobody has claimed it after some specified amount of time, they give it a Panamanian name and it goes to Panamanian school. And otherwise, that's it. I mean, if you pick up a baby in the jungle, it's yours. I mean, it's literally like that. I mean, they could take it up to, they could show up on the Mexican border with El Paso with this.
That's just so incredible to me and so tragic, Michael, because you and I have seen a lot. I know you've seen an enormous amount of tragedy. I remember talking one time to a war correspondent, Kelly Kennedy, and I don't know if you remember her from Iraq, but she used to work for Military Times. And there was one conversation I'll never forget. And she was saying, a lot of war correspondents, I remember being in Afghanistan, seeing what was happening there, have tremendous amount of weight on their shoulders. You've seen a lot. It's almost a type of post-traumatic stress disorder, that like a PTSD when we're dealing with what we're seeing. What is that like for you? I mean, I'm going to just take a step back from just the story of immigration, but just as a journalist covering these stories, I don't often get a chance to talk to other journalists who spend time there. But what's that like for you?
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, I've avoided the PTSD thing, I think, through management. For instance, I don't drink. I don't do drugs. Most of the serious war correspondents of our level, they burn out. Most of them become druggies or alcoholics or whatever. I would take off from Afghanistan or Iraq and go walk around the Himalayas, go walk a couple 100 miles and go back to Afghanistan or whatever. So, I mean, one of the things that I find extremely helpful is to just go for long walks, right? Literally like 100 miles, 200 miles, right? And then I'll go back to the war. So that gives you a chance, get the sunshine, don't do drugs, don't drink alcohol. I eat too much ice cream, but I mean, I'm just kind of addicted to ice cream and chocolate. But otherwise, sugar is a drug, I guess it is. But I mean, but
that's the least of all. That's the least of all. That's what I keep telling myself too.
You got to get in the sunshine. It's really important. It's really important to go for walks. I met one guy out. His name is Rody Sanchez. He's got a YouTube channel. He's from Ecuador. I just met him last Tuesday. He's on video. Actually, on the first part of a video I just put on YouTube, you see the black guy with frizzy hair? That's Rody, right?
Where can people go on YouTube, though, first, before I go any further? Because I'm going to say it again at the end before we get off. But where can they go to see all of your YouTube videos?
Best is to go to my Patreon, because Patreon will feed you to it. But Rody, he was sitting on this dugout canoe, one of those kinds that's made out of a tree. And I'm like, one of these things is not like the other. I mean, he's got frizzy hair and stuff, and he's actually saw me and he smiled, and I was like, that's like an authentic smile. I'm like, who is this guy? He literally just come out of the jungle. I went and sat beside him. I'm like, who are you? He's like, I am from Ecuador. He starts telling me, and I was like, Ecuador? Why'd you just come through the Darien Gap? I mean, Americans move to Ecuador. Like, why are you going to America? He's like, oh, my father, he walked to 35 countries. I'm going to walk to 100. I was like, you just walked through the Darien Gap? How old are you? He's like 28 years old. And my Imbara Indian translator is with me. He's like, this guy's crazy. I'm like, he's not crazy. He's doing what I used to do. He's doing a walkabout, right? He said his dad did 35 countries. He's going to do 100. I said, how many have you done so far? He said 10, right? His name is Rody Sanchez. You can find him on YouTube. So I was like, wait a minute. So you just walk to the Darien Gap. Would you recommend that? He's like, no, it was I didn't realize it was so terrible. Nobody should do the Darien. He said, but now, I said, what are you going to do now? He's like, well, I'm going to go to, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, and I might not be able to get into America. This is an intelligent guy. And I said, wait a minute, are you really from Ecuador? He's like, oh, because you're asking because I'm black. And I'm like, yeah, how many black people are in Ecuador? He's like, there's one section, there's like 1 million actually. He's like, he's like, there's this one section. He's like, I'm from there. He's like, check my YouTube channel, which I did, of course. And I said, he's like, if I can get into America, I'm going to walk. I was like, do you want to migrate to America? He said, no, I just want to walk around. And then I'm going to keep going to Canada. And then I'm going to go somewhere else and keep walking. And I just want to walk. I said, if you make it to Mexico or to America, I'm going to find you and walk with you. Okay. He's like, okay, come on, we'll make YouTube.
Oh, well,
said,
there you
okay.
go. A full
I said,
invitation right here. It's on the record. You're going to walk with them. I'm so ready for you to do this. This is what's so fascinating.
And everything.
Well, I think this is what's so.
The Embarra people every day after that. Last Tuesday, I made the video, right? And so every day I'm with Embarra. They're talking about the crazy Ecuadorian who just walked through Darien Gap. I'm like, he's not crazy. He's doing a walkabout. Right.
And I think that's so, no, look, it's such great advice because I think everyone goes through different things in their life. Everybody has a different cross to bear. Everybody has their own job, their own issues, right? But really, I think that's what helps me too, is just walking and, taking a moment to really realize what our blessings are, right? And because when you're seeing that, when you're out in a war zone, when you see the death, when you see the tragedy, sometimes it can be a lot and you have to take a step back and say, okay, but there's a whole other side to things. And I don't know if people realize, especially the work that you've done, how important it is, because your work, and the reason I did it myself, is to inform the public, to give them actual tangible knowledge of what's happening in the world so that we can make the right decisions. And I'm so afraid, Michael, that that the media now is failing our country on that our lawmakers are not doing their part to really understand what is happening here, and that the poor people that I truly, truly love, Central America, Mexico, our neighbors to the south, and the people that come here. I speak Spanish. My mother was from Cuba. I truly understand what they're going through, but I don't know if our lawmakers realize that their behavior and that their policies are perpetuating this horrific situation for all of these young people and for all of these families. What is your message to them? I mean, what am I wrong here? Am I right? I don't know. I mean, just you tell me.
Interestingly, when I just put that video up, the one that you just played, the offices of Representative Burgess Owens and Tom Tiffany, Burgess from Utah, football player, whom you know, and also Tom Tiffany from Wisconsin, they immediately asked me if they can come down here this week. And I'm going to tell you this now because the trip is off. They can't get the funding because the speaker is not approving things like this.
Ooh, so, Nancy Pelosi, she's putting the kibosh on the trip.
Yep. And so, but they literally, otherwise, Burgess may have been here tomorrow. So we just canceled it last night. And so anyway, bottom line is there are a few, like you, for instance, who will come out into a jungle like this and check it out. There are a few lawmakers like Burgess Owens, he's a real stud, and Tom Tiffany, same, that are ready to go out in that dugout canoe and go out and see it with their own eyes. And they're asking me, what's the threat level? I'm like, well, it's not exactly safe, but you're willing, I'll take you out there. I'll get you in and I'll get you out. And, you chances of you getting hurt are quite low. But I mean, they're not nothing. You know what I mean? This is the jungle, right, and this is the Darien Gap. So, but we still do have some leaders like that. And we still do have some real journalists like you who actually go out into this stuff. But as you know, 90% at least will not do it. And so they're like flies, eating each other's vomit, and so it's just a circular store, right?
So
I got
great.
that from a soldier. You get all the best.
Wait, I love that.
Statements from a soldier.
Yeah, that's right. They're like flies eating each other's vomit. I just pictured like the Washington Post, the New York Times, and MSNBC and CNN. I didn't throw myself in there. Eating each other's vomit, like just trying to keep up with Michael Yon. But this is the thing. I want to go. I want to meet you in Panama, and I want to take this trip with you. I will not tell anybody when.
I'll take you this week. You can come on an airplane tomorrow. I'm supposed to go to Armenia Saturday. You come tomorrow. I'll take you to the jungle I'll take you to the jungle on Wednesday.
And that was it. Michael Yon. I mean, how amazing is this? I mean, that he's right there. He's able to talk to us, deliver the information straight to you. No hyperbole. I mean, this is not a press release. This is a guy on the ground who knows what's going on because he's seeing it with his own eyes and talking to the right people. Like I said, I'm going to be bringing the rest of the interview with Michael Yon to you. in the next couple of weeks. He has so much more to say. There was so much more that he did talk about that I think is vitally important right now, especially at this time in our country. I know I told all of you at the beginning of this podcast that I would get to my least favorite person in government. Yeah, there is a least favorite person in government, and his name is John Kerry, the former Secretary of State during the Obama administration. I think this guy is just, I don't even know. I feel like he's not even like a really good one, but I'm going to say this. He's like a spy for Iran, right? Like he is such an apologist for Iran and everything. And now we know how low he has become, like how low he's gotten with this new leak. It's crazy. But according to this leak, it's a audio tape that was obtained by the New York Times as well as some others. And Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, he claimed in this audio leak that when John Kerry was serving as Secretary of State during the Obama administration, he was basically ratting out on the Israelis. He basically informed the Iranians of more than 200 Israeli operations in Syria. Does not surprise me in the least. This man, everything he touches just turns to crap. It's like even our, relationship with Israel. It's like, seriously, this is what the Obama administration was doing. And you know what? I'm not just going to put it on John Kerry, because he wouldn't have done that without the authority of President Obama. I truly believe that President Obama was doing that. They were always pandering, always handing out the olive branch to the enemies of the United States. Israel, our closest ally in the Middle East. Israel, the only nation that keeps the Middle East power-hungry crazies in check. No, they were the enemy to President Obama and to his administration. The real allies of President Obama, in their mind, was Iran. But they just couldn't do it, right? They couldn't say that openly. They did it through, of course, the JCPOA and through the Iran deal, but they couldn't actually say it publicly. So they would sneak behind Israel's back. They were constantly undermining Israel, constantly undermining Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It was just a constant. It was the exact opposite when President Trump came into office. But now, because the Biden administration, which is really the Obama administration, which is really secretly being run by Susan Rice, desperately wants that legacy back. The legacy of we gave Iran everything. I don't even know why anybody would want that. Now, of course, people had to leak this information and be like, look, this is what's going on. This is what's going on in the Biden administration, which is really the Obama administration, which is really being run by Susan Rice administration. That's what's going on here. So Zarif, he was probably like, man, this guy's a bonehead. He just told us about Israeli operations. If for any reason, John Kerry, you are listening to me, which I know you're not, but if for any reason you thought in that moment when you divulged on your ally all those operations to the Iranian regime, that you thought the Iranians would think you were cool and make you a part of their club, you were so wrong. They just can't stand you now even more. They just think you're a dweeb even more. They're like, you're a loser and you can't be trusted ever with anything. They're just like, wow, what a sellout. But that's good for us. But that's really what they thought. That's really what they thought. If you ever want to talk to me about it, you can give me a call because I'll explain to you. I lived in the Middle East for a long time and they just will not. And I did not live in Iran, but I did live in Saudi Arabia. They will just think of you as a sellout to your ally. That's what you are. You're a big sellout. And I'm glad it's out and I'm glad everybody knows now. And I hope you have to answer for it, right? I hope you have to answer for it. Folks, I know we've been on the show, back and forth talking about so many different subjects. And I tell you, there's so much more that I want to bring to you. I have so many more plans for great podcasts in the future. One of them, like I said, our focus is going to be on bringing you some really interesting developments in the UFO, our continuation to investigate that with Luis Elizondo and others, and bringing you some really special guest people that can actually answer some questions that I have about it with regard to the Pentagon, with regard to our work with our foreign allies on this subject, which I find fascinating, probably one of the most important discussions in human history, if it's ever proven to be true that we are not alone. So we've got that coming up for you. We're going to be focused on the border. Like I said, I plan on going to Panama and visiting with Michael Yon and spending some time there talking to the folks that are trying to get to the United States, and also talking to others about the national security implications that has for us. I appreciate all of your support. So I need you to go out there and I need you to download this podcast. I need you to give us a great review. Give us that 5-star rating. I want you to be a part of this team because you are a part of this team. I couldn't do it without you. Again, thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. Here we are taking the story back.
Hi, it's Dana Lash, host of The Dana Show. Every day, I'm here to keep you up to speed on the most important stories and info that you need to know in your very busy life. And if you're always on the go and you want to stay connected, just download our daily podcast and take it with you. It's a great way to get up to speed on what you need to know and what legacy media may not be telling you. Visit danaradio.com and click on the podcast link or subscribe at iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.